Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Packet live stream. It is March 25th. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good. How are you doing?
Can't complain. I mean, I could complain, but who'd give a shit? Anyways, yeah. Things are good. Sunny day in LA, or at least it's trying to be. Um, but yeah, the markets are up today, which is just always nice.
Yeah, that's
Brings a
nice.
little smile to your face. I actually just read a little, uh, like a meme where they're like, the last time this happened, the beginning of the bull run began. And this is the signal. Like, guys, you need to relax. All right, I get that you're, the crypto hype people, but um, this ain't the beginning of the bull run yet. We got a lot of sideways to go before
Yeah,
the signals are triggered.
yeah. I think from my analysis, and it depends on how long it goes, but it'll be an interesting moment at the end of April, um, April 28th. If we can be above this kind of like 69, 70,000 range, that's going to be my signal for things looking positive. We have like a downward trend line off of the Bitcoin price. Um, and so that's kind of, I think we're going to trade generally sideways for the next month. And that'll be a moment where we're either going to kind of, and it could just continue to go sideways there. But as long as it doesn't hit that level and just leg down substantially over the next 30 days, that would generally be good. But yeah,
I don't know. The next halving is April 2028.
okay. So we
So
got some time,
got a couple weeks left.
a couple years. Um, but yeah, that's a long way to come. It's interesting though because usually the bull run does begin to heat up sometimes just a little bit before the halving, I guess you could say sometimes,
2
um,
years.
and then sometime after. Yeah, no, I mean in a year. I don't.
Well, usually, I mean, what's weird is we usually have a long. Well, hold on. Is that right? 2028 is the next halving. That seems actually a little long. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head.
I looked into Google, but
Google likes
Google
to be
Google
accurate.
sometimes likes to lie to you.
Oh, well, I guess that too. Um,
It
but yeah,
says ChatGPT.
ChatGPT,
Yeah, they both. It says
April.
April 2028. I
Okay.
guess
Yeah, well, it's usually around an
Council of
election.
AI has spoken.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually around an election, election year. So
Yeah,
that's
that's true. That's
that's
true.
accurate.
Not usually. It always is
Right.
around
Always is for an election year. So, um, yeah, but I mean, it's just you kind of don't know the exact month where it kind of falls. But yeah, it's always the election year. Um, but yeah, where it starts to heat up, it's anybody's guess. And there's usually some macro catalysts that can help, trigger things going one way or another. But over the next, let's say, month, you know, are we hanging out above 70? Are we going to be below? And I do generally think that this kind of mid 60s and 70 range is really the general consensus floor. And
Mm.
then it doesn't mean that it couldn't go lower, but I just think that that's kind of where we're going to see it
Yeah,
relative.
I think we could get some wicks down, but yeah, this is where it's going to chop. I mean, between here and 100 for the next 2 years is kind of where it'll bounce
Yeah.
bounce
and,
around.
and to get like the actual leg up over that kind of 125, that's going to be probably closer into that the next run, whatever that looks like, whatever
Mm.
catalyst that is. Um, both on the American side and also on the international side, because there's a lot of confluence that needs to occur. In the short term, though, we're just continuing to grind away. Can give a little kind of general update on this transaction. So the transaction was supposed to close. at least our date was on Monday, 2 days ago, and and we kind of anticipated. We always give ourselves like a little buffer, so we were saying end of the month. Um, in terms of the contractual stuff, all of that has been almost completed. There's this last little set of red lines that came in on Monday that are just super. We'll path through them hopefully today or tomorrow. So I think the agreement's going to relatively be done, and then it's just going to be a matter of getting the payment rendered, and that could end up taking an extra 2 weeks. But we're waiting to see. But everything will be held and sitting there, ready to go. So at this point, I think we can absolutely confidently say this thing will close out, in by April, in April. And yeah, we're getting fired up. We've actually been taking some really, really cool meetings with people that were involved with the brand, in its early days, and there's just a lot of excitement about um, this thing getting stood back up, and also just talking to people who are involved, that are passionate and love the project, and we've explained our vision for it, and there's just a lot of excitement about this new approach and how we want to build it out. So that's been giving us a lot of confidence that we're on the right track.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's been the coolest thing is, first of all, just how much like fanfare this brand has, especially from the people who created it, but also just from the industry at large and the people, the people who we talk to about it, and all the kind of opportunity that's created in our conversations. And I've just while you're talking, I was just reading in the chat, and there's all these concerns about, hey, there's only 50 people who watched the video, our live streams, and it's the funny thing about it all is, and we've said this before, is that we're always trying to get people to come here. With this brand, we're gonna bring everyone here over there, and that's just the big game changer. We're bringing people to an audience. We're including our the Packet audience into a much greater audience, and it's just going to make life so much easier than just trying to get people hyped about something you're doing over here. And you're like, hey, swim over to this island. I know we don't have any boats, and we don't have any canoes, and if you just swim real hard, then you can make it to our island. And we haven't really even built schools or malls or houses, but you can live on our island. And it's just like it's a hard thing to ask people to do. But if you can like bring the few people on the island to Manhattan, and you're like, hey, now you live in a city, and like we have all the things here, and it's just like this is your experience. That's just going to make everybody's experience that much better, and being able to implement the technology that we built with Packet into this bigger story, into this bigger ecosystem, and elevate what was happening over here with all the stuff that we've been building on our little island.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
that's my
That's always
analogy for the day.
what was the last thing you said?
That's my analogy for the day.
Yeah, no, it's a good analogy, and it's certainly the way that we've felt, and especially with where crypto is right now. Obviously everyone had high hopes, under this new kind of, at least on the American administration side of things, about, where things would go with crypto, and having a pro crypto American president has meant absolutely nothing positive for anything going on in the crypto world. It's been chaos, disaster, pretty much nothing but the price going down. The alt coin ecosystem is absolutely obliterated. Everyone, if you didn't get rugged, you're down, 80% in your bag or worse. And even if you're holding the blue chips, you're down what, 40%. So Yeah, at least. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough sledding out there. And I think the key during every single bear market has been people kind of turning inwards and working on utility. That's pretty much been the story for the last basically 10 years now, going all the way back to like the ICO days. It was like, when people knew that, when people kind of all the pump and grift kind of filtered out, and then it was like, okay, well, let's focus on things that are real, tangible, and utility, specifically around the Ethereum ecosystem at the time. And when everybody came back out from that bear market, which really was around, packets, most significant growth period, that kind of like 2021, 2022 period, um, it was a lot of, that was really like the beginning of DeFi. It was really what kind of DeFi is essentially what came out of that bear market, and that led to a whole, it always leads to a whole new level of grift. It's just essentially become like the shitcoin era. But nevertheless, there's been a lot of really really cool things that have come from that time period, and specifically around the growth of things that are happening within stable coins. All the app technology has gotten better, wallet technology has improved dramatically. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of um, this next bear market. What are the things that people are going to focus on? What are the things that are going to survive? What are the things that are going to die? And it's always easy, when your project has no foundation, to just let it go, and kind of filters into the nether worlds. But in our case, we really never wanted to give up in this vision of what can be done on the packet side. And so that this leg up, and hopefully at the point that we do make this announcement, will be a testament to this being one of those projects that ends up continuing forward through this bear market in specifics. So
Indeed.
also, and we've said this a bunch of times, but we've really wanted to bring more than just like KOLs to the project, and starting to associate ourselves with major brands, celebrities, influencers, people that aren't in the crypto industry. I think that'll be the next big piece of this, as we get to focus on media and entertainment. It's like sports, celebrity, big brands that have huge, public followings, that we can do things with them in the entertainment space and the streaming space, is going to really help us kind of expand our profile and awareness. And that's where, I think the marketing engine will be driven from. So,
Totally.
yeah, but we got a lot of tech that's going to need to get built, and then a lot of marketing that's going to need to get done.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's, we're creating the framework for it all to be possible. And it's really just about getting this deal done. It's just
yeah,
so close. It's just crazy. We're just like sitting on the precipice, like the lawyers are just doing lawyer things. So it's kind of in God's hands. But I mean, not really. I mean, everything's kind of like on track, it's
yeah,
just this hurry up and wait situation. And just letting the process happen. So we understand that everybody in the community is, has this vision that like the second this acquisition completes, that their bag 100x's. And I respect that optimism. And we love everyone who's stuck around with us through this tumultuous time. But yeah, it's just, we just got to run the process and get this thing done. I do think that, this announcement will be massive. And we've already just started kind of placing information into the hands of press, and that way we can really get this announcement out there. But also, it's one of those things that people are going to pick up, where we're not having to like hard sell people to write an article about it.
yeah,
And so that's also going to be pretty exciting.
yeah, sure. I think the other thing that we've been talking about that's maybe conversation to loop, I'd love to hear, Jeremy and Caleb's thoughts on it, but we've been talking a lot about the predictive markets and being able to incorporate prediction markets into the streaming space. And I think that's probably one of the more key crossovers into the crypto world, just being that that was essentially the origin of it. But just watching TV, like watching like the Golden Globes or the Academy Awards, and people are making predictions of who's going to win, and it kind of brings in the second screen experience where you basically have the app and you're able to wager on outcomes, and so we've been really keen to figure out how to incorporate that into this direction we're going in the media and entertainment space, and ways that we can incorporate Packet into that conversation as well. But being that and it's interesting, Caleb, because I was looking at specifically like Kalshi allows you to load up your account, just with like a credit card. You don't need crypto at all. And so I've been trying to think like, what is the bridge with the predictive markets in crypto, or is it just kind of like doesn't really matter at all?
Well, the thing with crypto is that you can have a smart contract, and then you can have multiple different platforms that are interfacing with the same contract, so you can share the same depth of that market. And so I looked at Polymarket the other day, and apparently France has banned them, so can't use Polymarket here. But I guess in theory, if I could find the contract, I could interface with it directly, because it's a contract, right?
Right.
You can ban the website, but not the contract.
Right.
I mean, you can't stop people. And I think that's where crypto is going to come in, is for two reasons. One is because you've got these different markets, and they all can't agree on anything. And number two, they can't agree to share their users. That'll never happen. But if they're backed by a smart contract, then they can. And number two is when states are saying, no, you can't do that. If it's, a website pretty much has to block you. But if the contract's still there, then that's, the website can't, that doesn't matter to the website what they have to say. So those are the two things that come to my mind, which means, you have more prediction markets that are more that are more spicy, because they're less regulated. But then the question is, who's gonna adjudicate that? Who's gonna say whether you won or lost? And that's really challenging adjudication on a lot of this stuff, because
right.
What if a group of people just continue to argue that no, that didn't happen, which we know that didn't happen.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And we actually saw that a little bit, because there were people who wagered that the Ayatollah would be out by, what was it, by the end of March or something like that. And then obviously he's out because he got killed and got airstriked. And then they came back and said, oh, well, we don't pay out for death. And it's like, whoa.
That's because of Jim Bell. For those who don't know, there was a guy back in the 90s. He's still alive, by the way. And he wrote a book called Assassination Politics. And in that, he argued that in the future, and this was before crypto, this was in the 90s, he argued that in the future, there will be prediction markets on the death of people, particularly well-known public people. And by playing, so what will happen is there'll be a spread of, where you can predict what day they're going to die. And or you can predict under what circumstances they're going to die. And so what it becomes is a way to slip money to a person who eventually assassinates them by you just bet on anything. You say, well, I predict he's going to die of whatever, cancer. And then the person who wants to win says, well, I predict he's going to get shot in the head. And the next day they do it. And then they're able to sweep up all the money that was in that market. He predicted, he imagined this happening. 3 decades ago? Yeah, 3 decades ago. And we haven't really gotten there. And I know that if they're saying we don't pay out for death, it's because that whole topic about assassination markets is obviously, what's the word? Sensitive.
Yeah.
Sensitive. But the question is, will we get there? And I think the reason why we haven't is because, well, you have to put that market somewhere. There's somebody who's going to adjudicate that, and then there's some servers and some computers. Even if it's a smart contract, there is something, and whatever that something is, the international community is going to say, hey, you have to cut that out. But with the international community becoming more fragmented, we may actually start to see that. So interesting times ahead, right?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say, probably my favorite thing about all this is, in a world where streaming platforms are all owned by the major corporations, Tubi with Fox and, Paramount buying Warner. It's just like everything's getting gobbled up. Yeah. So it will be fun to be kind of a like an independent, one of the ones that aren't owned by these huge companies, and see what happens there. And also the idea of being able to use crypto to do predictive markets, sorry guys, is really exciting, because I don't see that anywhere right now. And
Polymarket, you can technically do it because it's someone really wants to get a hold of you.
Here, this is calling me 20 times. 1 sec.
With Polymarket being on Polygon, I'm sure that there's people doing it. But what's also really interesting about Polygon, and I don't know exactly how their tech stack works, that it's using their blockchain infrastructure, even though people are paying with cash or paying with their credit cards, and their liquidity pools and all that stuff around this stuff. I would assume that they're using the Polygon infrastructure for those transactions within the predictive markets.
It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to it, but what I will say is I was very impressed the other day. I actually opened up a wallet, and I had a little bit of BNB in there that I just didn't even remember. And BNB's gone up a lot. I think it's like $700-800 or whatever, $600-700 for one BNB. I don't remember when I got that BNB, but I didn't ever pay that. And so I needed to move like $100 somewhere. And in USDT, and you were able to, in the wallet, I think it's a MetaMask wallet, if I'm not mistaken. In the MetaMask wallet, you can choose to sell BNB and receive USDT on ERC20 right in the wallet. And when you do it, let's say you want to sell $100 worth, it sells it, and then it shows you that it's doing a BNB to ETH bridge right in the wallet, and then it does the bridge in the wallet, and then it gives you what you wanted. And that's pretty cool, because I wasn't there a year ago. It's exciting because whether it's Packet or people coming into the Packet ecosystem on Base. Remember when we launched, how challenging it was to just get Base Ethereum. You had to go through like a bridge manually. They had limits. It was pretty terrible UI. You had to kind of like go do multiple steps on a manual basis. So now that the wallets are doing it, I actually haven't tried going to Base. That's actually something I should try and see what the bridge is built into the MetaMask wallet now. But yeah, it should, with the integrated bridges in the wallets, that should basically be a game changer for people to be able to do, a wider range of transactions and essentially blockchain agnostic at that point. There's no friction to get yourself. Well, the friction is that people don't know how to use crypto wallets, but there's no direct friction to be able to, transact cross chain. And so, how does that relate to what we're doing? If we're getting into the sports space or in the streaming space, integrating prediction markets, and we want to natively incorporate Packet, we're not going to need to require people to go do a lot of transacting prior to entering our ecosystem. They can essentially connect their wallet, use whatever currency they want. That currency can do all the bridging on the back end, still transact natively with Packet on the front end, and it's not going to be some nuisance for someone who's like, I only have Ethereum, on ERC20, or how do I get to the base, ecosystem, etc. So there's that. The other piece, and we've talked about this before, but the other piece that I'm incredibly passionate about is when it comes to royalties payments and anyone who's distributing content on these platforms, enabling them to get paid in real time in stablecoin. And because I think, no one wants to be paid. Like if you owe someone $100, you don't want them to pay you in a cryptocurrency that could fluctuate by 10, 20, 30% any given day. You do want to have stable. But I think that establishing some sort of, whether it be a partnership, formal partnership with like a Coinbase, and enable people to receive their royalty payments in a stable coin, USDC, and connect their, because there's Coinbase Commerce is pretty, well established at this point. I think Coinbase, being a public company, has established a good level of trust. And so there's certainly an opportunity. I know, most of the people who are like crypto natives, no one's going to trust Coinbase for the most part, on the crypto side. But on the commerce side, like if you're a, corporation like Lionsgate or Warner Brothers or something like that, I would presume that you would feel more comfortable being associated with Coinbase and receiving, royalty payments in your Coinbase wallet that can be very easily withdrawn right into your bank account, because that rail between Coinbase wallets or Coinbase .com and your bank account is very frictionless. I mean, if you haven't ever used it before, you can cash out money on Coinbase and withdraw it to your, at least American bank account. I don't know if this works internationally, in real time, 7 days a week, 24/7. I mean, that's pretty cool. That you don't have to worry about business. What's that?
In Europe, wire transfers are usually just like that. It's pretty much instant, or you can pay 50 cents and it will be really instant, or it's like a day.
Right.
And the reason for that is because there is no Europe-wide checking system as there is in the US. So you can have checks in France, but they're not usable in Germany. So people don't really use checks. They use wire transfers. And so wire transfers are very fast here. So it's kind of the same thing as, I guess ACH is the one that got it kind of working in the US.
Yeah, I presume that's what they're using. And yeah, if you are part of like Coinbase One, then you pay like either a monthly fee or an annual fee, and you don't get these fees on if you want to transfer like on a 1 to 2 day basis. And if you want instant transfer, then they hit you with like a 1 or 2%, maybe 3% charge, which can be substantial if you're withdrawing a large, 4-finger truck. You can get hit with a few $100 for sure in fees. But still, that optionality of being able to cash something out and receive it in your bank account immediately is impressive. And just to be able to have that rail from crypto to fiat and to be able to route it through your bank account in real time, it's pretty impressive. So I think there's I don't think a lot of people know about this. I don't think a lot of people in the traditional world care or know about it. But what I believe will change that is everyone knows the frustration of being owed money, and you go to the vendor and you're like, hey, you owe me this money, and they're like, okay, send us an invoice. First off, there's no possibility of auditing the validity of that invoice, but you just go, okay, they owe me some money, let me invoice them. And then you have to wait 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks to get paid, and you're sitting there being like, hey, I gotta pay some bills. Like, when are you guys sending me this payment? They're like, oh, it's with the accounting department. We needed to verify a few things. So there's a lot of human error, a lot of friction. And if it's just like, real-time payments in stable, it's filling up your wallet, you can cash it out at any time. You can do instant transfer or 1 to 2 day, settlement for free, on Coinbase. I think that's something I would prefer for sure. It's like, hey, do you want to get paid once every 3 months, or you want to get paid in real time? Who's gonna pick 1 to 3 months?
Yeah, and these are the interesting games we get to play, and coming from our the crypto background, get to bring a little innovation into a pretty old school industry. And it's ripe for change. You even have the president bringing in his technology advisors. I mean, they're all the biggest social media and technology people in the game. I mean, there's definitely this push to technology and innovation and an upgrade of our current systems. So yeah, it's a good time to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll obviously be back here next week, and that'll be into April. So at that point, we should have a real clear view on our kind of like closing finalization timeline. And then, yeah, look, it's a whole new era going to unfold, next month for us, and kind of shifting the conversation and the profile of everything. Obviously, as we've said many times before, this brand in particular is going to get a lot of the fanfare, and it's going to be about us bolting the Packet ecosystem in as a specific, utility use case, and kind of also representing a lot of the history that brought us to this point, which I think will be generally positive. But how that's going to impact, price, and it's anybody's guess, just based on the fact that the market is just so depressed right now. That said, price of Packet is basically the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah, not basically, it is the lowest. So,
so
nowhere but up.
Yeah, I'm excited to warm that one up for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time.
Yep.
And thanks everyone who tuned in, and stay tuned for more.
Yeah, we'll be in the chat. So if you have any questions, whatever, fire them our way.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
All right. Take care,
guys. Later. Bye.